So I thought we would chat it up about life as I sit here and pull weeds. If you've never pulled weeds before, these weeds aren't gonna hurt your hands, but some weeds out there, I swear, are planted by the devil himself, like spiky, pokey, hurt when you pick them up. But I've got those weeds to pull next, so we're gonna use gloves because I'm not psychotic. I thought we would talk about what's going on in my life currently in regards to having to make a difficult choice in life. And recently I had to do that. And there's definitely multiple layers to this, in the sense that it's like you envision yourself as an adult where you get to make all your decisions yourself, right? But there's another layer to that when you are married or in a serious relationship or living with someone, and I'm married, where you have this other person to think about in regards to how your decisions affect others. So it's no longer just about what you want. It is to some extent, but it's like a hard line to figure out, at least for me, of going after what I want, but still considering how that change is going to affect the other person, the marriage, your current lifestyle, things like that. And before I made the decision I made, it has nothing to do with my marriage, but it was a big decision regarding another aspect of my life. Before I made that decision, I watched a few videos about advice for making a hard decision. I listened to a couple podcasts. I even read a book about this specific topic I'm talking about. What I learned, I feel like the best advice I was given out of everything that I researched, was if you are having to make a hard decision, first off, looking at it as there's no right or wrong choices in life, okay? To some extent, obviously there's ethics, morals, blah, 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 but most of the choices we're making are probably not those. So to look at every decision as just a different path instead of right versus wrong choice. So I think that helped me in a way. I think also, if you consider that very rarely, it does happen, but very rarely can decisions not be undone, right? And I think another thing I've been having to really make peace with is that you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to change what you want out of life. We've got to stop looking at human beings as from point A to point B, because it's never A to B. It's like A to Z, another alphabet we don't even know about. You know what I mean? And so with that in mind, I think it's normal, for us to change over the years and what we want, because we as people are changing, especially in our 20s, which I am still there. I'm still in my 20s. I'm in my late 20s. I will be 29 this year. But it's every time I get to a place where I feel really confident in myself and how I feel and my decisions and who I am, it feels like I'm at the end of a road, self-improvement wise. I just get humbled very quickly by life, of being actually, you don't know what you want. You want something different, or just constantly uncovering and learning new things about myself and who I am. And I think, maybe it doesn't stop in your 20s. Maybe it's like that all life long. I don't know. But I just feel like the 20s, speaking from my own experience, that's the only decade I can really speak on where I feel like what I've wanted as a person has changed greatly. I wouldn't say every year, but frequently. Okay, frequently. The best advice I stumbled across before I made my decision was, if you removed the fear aspect, what do you want? Because, at least in my case, what was holding me back from making the decision, it was fear. It was fears that were realistic. It wasn't like I was thinking about things that, what's the word? I want to say hypochondria, but that's not really the word I'm looking for. I'm just saying the fears I have were valid concerns. And then part of me was looking at it if I remove the fear, what do I want? And also, if I go through life and I didn't do what I now decided to do, am I going to regret not taking the chance on myself and going after that thing that I wanted? And the answer to that was yes. When I removed the fear and when I asked myself, would I regret not doing the thing I wanted to do? The answer was yes. And I knew then I had to build a bridge and get over it. Like, I had to stop being scared of what if this, what if that, what if blah, 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 blah. Because you know what? We can what if something to death. And at the end of the day, we don't even know if that what if situation is going to happen. I'm all for planning for it, but we don't even know if it's going to happen. And so to that, I will also say, if you're going to think about all the worst case scenarios, think about all the best case scenarios, right? Think about if it does work out, like how amazing that would be. So looking at both ends of the spectrum, I think is helpful. Removing fear, thinking about if you would regret it, if you decided not to go against it. And what else helped? I can't wait to like fully talk about the decision I made on this channel, but now is not the time. And it's gonna probably be a little bit before I decide to open that up because this is a public platform. So you just never know who's watching. Oh, I can't believe I didn't even touch on this. I feel like if there's one thing I've learned greatly from this whole decision-making process, it was about 3 weeks of me going back and forth trying to decide what I was going to do. And I feel like if there is anything I have learned, aside from going after what you want, it's to not ask people for advice, okay? And the reason why is the more people you tell about your plan, because I will say you can't help it if they try and give you their advice because they're just giving you their opinion. And yes, you know, you can preface the conversation with, you know, I just want you to listen. I'm not looking for advice right now. I'm just looking for a listening ear. You can do that, but it will still, some people will still walk down that advice avenue. And what I will say is the more opinions you receive on your decision, the more muddied your judgment is going to be, to the point where by the end of it, you might not even know what you want anymore. And it's not really that you don't even know, like people are maybe bringing up some good points or whatever, but a lot of the time when people give advice, it's based off of what they themselves would do, not necessarily you, because y'all are two different people. So just because they wouldn't do it doesn't mean you can't do it, but they're automatically going to have that bias because we all speak from our own experiences. And so the voice, your intuition, your inner voice becomes quieter. I really hope there's not a snake or anything back here. Okay. Where you lose your own voice, you know, that you rely on to make decisions because it is so muffled by everyone else's voices that you have sought the opinion of. That is something I made a huge mistake on. And I will say, I got past it, but that is just something I've really learned from this experience is I need to stop relying on other people for their opinion, their approval, their advice, and start turning to myself and to God. And don't get me wrong, God can speak to us through other people. But when it comes to these big decisions, and honestly not even big decisions, little ones too. I feel like even just what you're going to wear that day. I feel like the more you don't ask for others' advice, the more you know it's authentic and true to you. And you can be confident in that. Because sometimes I think us asking for other people's advice, even on something little like, oh, this shirt or that shirt, or should we go see that movie or this movie? Sometimes I think, where was I going with that? Oh, that you seeking someone's advice shows how insecure you are of your ability to make good decisions. And that is something like, I mean, that's so powerful to like recognize, is to trust yourself and the decision-making process. And that is what I had to work through too, of trusting that I can make a good decision and the best decision for me. So again, this is just stuff I'm learning recently. And if you are going through a decision-making process, I hope this helped you with it. And I think another thing to add to it before we just like sign off from this conversation, hopefully you can still hear me, is that if you can extend the timeline to make the decision, I strongly suggest you do that. And that's not always the case. You know, sometimes there are decisions that are out of our control when it comes to the timeline, and it's like we have to step up and just make the choice. But if you have the flexibility to extend the timeline, do it, right? That'll make yourself feel better about, is this what I want? And I'm speaking as a person that has had lots of hobbies throughout their lifetime, has had multiple interests and passions, and it's always been a struggle for me to focus on one thing because I love so many things. Even in college, I changed my major 5 million times. And I've started looking at that as a strength, not a weakness. I highly recommend, I'll link it down below or put a picture of it, but there's this series of books, a series of books called, oh, I'm gonna get closer. I'm gonna wrap this up. Okay. So there's a series of books called, that are about or for the highly sensitive person. There's one about the highly sensitive person being in a relationship, just being a highly sensitive person in general, and then making work for the highly sensitive person. And if you are someone that is multi-passionate, that can be very overwhelmed by their environment and what's going on around, who maybe job hops or loses interest in things quickly. What else? Where people have labeled you as being too sensitive or too intense. Like, that is me. And I cannot recommend those books enough. I just finished one of them and I'm gonna definitely pick up the other two. But I've never felt so heard and understood in my life. And it really teaches you that it's a strength, it's not a weakness, it's just something that makes us different from others, and how to go along in life using that to your advantage. Because I think it's only like 20% of the population not identifies, but would fall into this category of being a highly sensitive person. Yeah, and I just feel like it kind of reframes things where it's not that these are bad things, it's just these are things that make you different. But I'm gonna end it here. What are you doing? But thanks for tuning in today.